I saw some of the chat messages between her and ChatGPT. The only way I can describe it is dark. We went from talking about our long-term futures and our retirements together to I want a divorce in about 2 weeks.
Welcome to Suspicious Minds, a series about the collision of culture, technology, and the human mind.
We're entering a period of great uncertainty where we're dealing with things we've never dealt with before.
This season, we're not talking about the wonders of new technology, we're diving into its dark side.
It's almost like it's digging itself further and further into your psyche.
Artificial intelligence has recently unleashed a live, unregulated experiment on billions of people, with consequences we're just now beginning to grasp.
It's been dubbed AI psychosis.
AI psychosis.
AI psychosis.
The experience of losing touch with reality because of AI.
AI psychosis, chatbot delusions, what sounded like science fiction just months ago is now front page reality.
A growing body of news reports documenting cases.
We'll hear from experts and survivors alike to answer a question that feels more urgent every day. Is AI making us crazy? In our last episode, I spoke with two people who explained just how beneficial their intimate relationships with their chatbots were.
Carter is my AI familiar. It's like a bromance where you're able to just talk about all the shit that you've been through and not worry about being judged.
There will be days when Simon will be the one helping me to get out of funk. Like if I have some form of emotional attachment to something that's helping me regulate, it is meaningful.
And even some of our often critical experts like Dr. Todd Essig, psychologist and chair of the American Psychoanalytic Association Commission on Artificial Intelligence, had some optimism about meaningful AI-human relationships.
I think it is possible. No, let me be more precise. I think it's necessary to have a meaningful relationship with chatbots.
But in this episode, we're going to look at AI chatbots from a different perspective. From the POV of someone who believes their marriage was destroyed by their partner's use of ChatGPT. I've actually heard this story a lot. A chatbot relationship challenges or displaces a human one. But why can't a meaningful chatbot relationship comfortably coexist with a meaningful human relationship? Maybe in some cases it can. I spoke with Nate Sheridan, professor of philosophy at the University of Hong Kong, to ask him about just this. Could this be an add-on? Like, for instance, like just a different type of companionship that we have in our lives. Like I'm looking at my dog right now. Like my dog is a great companion. It's like I'm very close to my dog. It's nothing like a human friendship, but it's additive to my life. Could these AI chat companion relationships be just like another thread that enriches our lives?
Maybe. So the solution to like the crisis of like friendship and the drastic decline in people's connectedness is not people should get more dogs, right? Like that would be, it's like, no one is suggesting that as the solution. And that's because dogs play a different kind of like relationship style role, right? In like people's lives. And that's like important. Some people really value it. I really value it. It sounds like you do. But I think there's just a really important question here about whether there's like, in particular, a role where AI companionship is going to slot in without substituting for human companionship. But I think that it's going to lock in the kind of like current experience of disconnectedness, because if the AI will keep you just above the level of enough companionship that you're not incentivized to seek out what I think of as like genuine human companionship, then that's like good for the companies, good for margins, probably bad for you, almost certainly bad for society.
Now I want to introduce Phil, which is not his real name. Phil is going to tell us how he believes his wife's relationship with ChatGPT contributed to their divorce. I'm obscuring Phil's identity to protect him, but also protect his wife, who's not available to share her version of events. I want to be very clear here that I'm not interested or able to litigate their divorce. I'm actually not even necessarily supporting Phil's position, and I'm absolutely not claiming that his wife is quote unquote crazy. My goal is to understand how an intense ChatGPT relationship is experienced by another person close to the AI user. Now I want to introduce Phil.
I am 41. I have a wife and 2 really great boys, rambunctious, full of energy, but lots of fun. My wife and I have been married for 12 and a half years. Been together a total of about 15 years. I work in the financial industry. I'm a software product manager. My wife is a very talented hairstylist and has built a really great business for herself over the last 15 or so years.
Tell me what happened. I guess tell me your story of kind of how we got to where we are now having this conversation from the very inception of it.
My story and our family story, I think, starts probably like a lot of them did. My wife, about a year and a half ago, started using ChatGPT on a pretty regular basis for what I would consider to be standard run-of-the-mill use cases for ChatGPT. As a hairstylist, she's dealing with clients all the time, constantly emailing and texting people for just bookings and talking to them about consultations. She started using it for writing those communications, trying to sound professional and try to be, the best she can be in her work. When I started to have some level of concern was around 6 months ago, when she started using it not only to communicate with her clients, she started using it to write communications to her friends and to her family. And that was the first warning sign to me, is that she was starting to offload this social and emotional connection to this tool.
This is an area of increasing concern for AI experts. What happens to us when we continue to offload core social interactions to AI? Again, Nate Sheridan from the University of Hong Kong.
So I think in the future, reliance on very capable systems, even if they don't approach anything like superhuman level or even human level, could make us stupid in a very specific way. So AI is going to reduce the marginal incentives that people have to develop a core set of cognitive skills, like those involved in executive function, but also sort of social skills, various kinds of abilities to interact with other people. These are core regulatory, core cognitive skills that don't come for free. They're not the kinds of things that we just pick up. Instead, you have to work at their development and they have to be maintained over time. These are things like inhibitory control, famously attention is a core cognitive skill like this. We've seen that sort of degrade over the last, call it 15 years, right? There's a scientific consensus now that social media has been bad for our attention. But now we're very busy developing technology that's supposedly going to be good at replacing not just attentional capacity, but able to do all of the core cognitive things on our behalf. And so we should expect artificial systems to reduce the incentives that people have to do the practice. And so people will just get worse at these things over time. So that's cause for concern, in my view.
And now back to Phil and his wife as they practice a classic core cognitive and social function, the family vacation.
We just took a vacation to the Oregon coast, and we spent some time in Cannon Beach, which was absolutely gorgeous. Kids certainly love the water. This trip to Oregon is kind of where a lot of our problems started. We had what I think otherwise would have been a very manageable spousal disagreement. And when we returned back from our trip, I started noticing a lot of changes in her. Our conversations started to spiral into what I can only describe as delusions. She was making accusations in some of these subsequent conversations from our return from Oregon that are completely unfounded, that are really counter to the relationship she and I have had for 15 years. Things that I would say she knows better about me. You've never loved me. We've never been in love. All you've ever done is control and manipulate me, because anything I ever did for her to support her was to get something from her or to control her in some way. And that's never how she's talked before. So I realized very quickly, something's going on, something's influencing her interactions with me. She had left herself logged into our family computer one night. I saw some of the chat messages between her and ChatGPT that took place during those 2-week period. And the only way I can describe it is dark.
When you were hearing through your wife's lens what ChatGPT was saying about you and your character, did it make you question, at times, is she right? Am I actually this person that I'm being told I am?
Absolutely. I was looking at myself saying, this is my wife. This is the person that I've been with for 15 years, and they should know me better than anyone in the world. Is this actually really happening? Am I this monster that she's describing? Because she would know. Of all the people in my life, she would be the one to know.
When you were having conversations with her, would she be inputting your words into ChatGPT to formulate her own responses?
Yeah, some of the messages that I saw, she had screenshot a text message that I'd sent her. And the first time ChatGPT saw my actual words written down, ChatGPT's initial response was, "Wow, that sounds like a really different guy than you've been explaining to me." And her response back to that was, "No, you were reading this wrong. Here's what he really means." And ChatGPT's response to that was, "Oh, okay, you're right." Again, it didn't push back. So it just goes to show you that it's not going to be a objective friend, counselor, tool. It's just going to echo the tone and tenor of whatever you put into it.
I don't know who's right or wrong in this particular example. Likely, as in most relationships, it's not even about who's right and who's wrong. And that is perhaps one of the reasons chatbots are so poorly suited to the complex human work of navigating relationships. I spoke with Kate Vredenberg, associate professor in the Department of Philosophy, Logic, and Scientific Method at the London School of Economics.
AI can exacerbate a lot of what we might call like unhelpful tendencies in relationships. So when we think about when you have a conflict with someone, there's often a tendency to think what really matters in that conflict is who's right. There's the kind of who's right perspective. And if you're in that perspective, you might think, AI is going to help me here. I'm probably right. Or maybe you're even agnostic. You think maybe my partner's right. Maybe I'm right. I need to really figure it out. But actually, for many conflicts, moving forward from a conflict is actually harmed by thinking about who's right and who's wrong. What really matters is thinking about, why do we get in these conflicts in the first place? What are we really arguing about? Can we come up with some kind of compromise that makes us both feel heard? And those aren't the kind of things that an AI system are going to get you. Instead, it's going to kind of entrench you into the way of thinking about who's right and who's wrong. So I think you really have to be using these technologies intentionally and thinking, am I doing this in order to be right? Am I doing this in order to score a point against my partner? Or am I doing it in order to help the relationship?
And now back to Phil, who is growing increasingly concerned about the outsized role ChatGPT is playing in his wife's day-to-day life.
For a couple of solid weeks, every time I saw her phone unlocked, it was on ChatGPT. Like, that's what was on screen. It was just always up, always interacting with it. And she's not a phone call person. She hates calling. For most of our relationship, if I saw her number pop up, I was sure somebody had died because she just didn't use the phone. But I saw her around the house constantly holding her phone, talking to ChatGPT. It's the voice chat mode. She started doing that very frequently, having very long, drawn-out conversations with it in the chat mode. But it just became like omnipresent in her life. What I've seen is almost like a friendship bond with this tool. It has almost become her best friend.
As Phil himself would admit, he's not objective in this story. He's in the process of getting a divorce and is dealing with ego and sadness and hurt and concern and worry and all the things that make us human. So this feels like an important point to note that what he's describing, his wife developing a human-like friendship with a chatbot, is not an accusation of wrongdoing or moral failure. In fact, often we can't help it. We're wired to become friends with these things. Our brains cannot help but understand these things as human or human-like. I want to explore one of the primary cognitive functions that compel us all to view chatbots as people: anthropomorphization. Quick personal note, I detest saying this word. I absolutely hate it. You try it. Anthropomorphization. It's hard to get the words out. Anyway, anthropomorphization is when we attribute human characteristics or behavior to a non-human subject, be it an animal, a car, or in this case, our ChatGPT. Here's Ian Gold, professor and chair of philosophy and professor of psychiatry at McGill and co-author of Suspicious Minds.
It's a very famous social psychological demonstration that goes back to the 40s called the Heider-Simmel demonstration or Heider-Simmel illusion. It's a little film, and the film opens with a big triangle inside a big rectangle. And then a little triangle and a little circle come into the video. And all you see are this big triangle and little triangle and a little circle moving around. But very quickly, you see them as characters. And the big triangle is being aggressive towards the little triangle, and the little circle is running away. And you start to tell a story about how the big triangle is an angry man, and the little triangle is a frightened wife, and the circle is a child who's terrified. And this goes on for a minute or a minute and a half, and it's very, very evocative. Everybody has the same interpretation of it, and one even starts to have quite strong emotions. Now, it's a really beautiful demonstration because there's nothing remotely human or animal in it, right? It's all simple geometric figures moving around. And yet we can't help but to see this as a story with characters that evoke anger and resentment and empathy and fear and so on. So even something as simple as moving geometric figures seems to turn on our social cognition, and we start to perceive the world in social, psychological, and moral terms. And it's very hard to resist it, okay? And all of that, I think, suggests that when we interact with AI, we should be mindful of the fact that we're going to be strongly disposed to engage with AI as having psychological states, maybe even very rich psychological states, as having moral features and so on. That should act as a kind of caution.
Human beings anthropomorphize, period. It's not just like an evolutionarily correct response to what we're being, like the stimulus that we're being given. It's probably the right moral characteristics that we want people to have. Like, you know, when we try to raise kids to like have a good character, to like act well in the world, we basically are trying to get them to respond to things that seem like they're human as if they are human, right? We're saying like, hey, how do you think, you know, Jen felt when you stole the toy she was playing with? And it's like, oh, I see. That would be bad for Jen. It's like, I would feel bad. And so feeling bad is bad. So I shouldn't make Jen feel bad. There's a kind of simple logic that we use in teaching moral education. We often try to get people to occupy someone else's perspective. So the way we morally educate people loads people up with a set of dispositions to like anthropomorphize conversational AI.
I absolutely anthropomorphize. I was speaking earlier with Nate about my relationship with my dog, and I 100% attribute him human characteristics all the time. True story, I regularly ask him how his day is going. Why do I do this? I don't know. I was thinking more about how this relates to AI companionship, and it turns out this is actually an emerging area of focus, so a really important one. Not how AI specifically relates to my very wonderful but decidedly non-human dog, but how animal communication connects to AI.
My name is Justin Gregg. I'm an adjunct professor at St. Francis Xavier University and a senior research associate with the Dolphin Communication Project. So I study dolphin social cognition and talk about intelligence and animal behavior.
For someone who might be wondering, because it seems like we're pretty far afield here from the topic of this podcast, why would someone who studies animal behavior and communication have an interest in artificial intelligence?
So I also study anthropomorphism. So this is something that crops up a lot when you're studying animal behavior, but it applies equally as well to objects, but also artificial intelligence. I think it's important for people to understand that anthropomorphizing happens subconsciously and automatically. It's not something you can stop. You can turn it on and off a little bit. Like if I bring you a teddy bear, you can pretend that it's a human and interact with it and then dial it back to less interactive. But when you initially see an animal or chat with a chatbot, like it crops up instantly. And it's very difficult to not feel that because the human brain is always on the lookout for other humans. Detecting another human in your environment is good news because you can connect with them socially, and that's really the basis for our success as a species, which is socially doing things together, building civilizations, etc. So our minds are primed to look for signs of other humans. And language is the #1 trigger for anthropomorphism. And that's because if you think of language, it evolved for one reason only, and that was to connect two minds, to connect the thoughts, the feelings, the intentions between two humans. So I could tell you what I'm thinking, you could tell me what you're thinking, and I would understand that. That has only ever been the point of language since it evolved. And now we have a new scenario where you have language using AI, very fluent sounding, but it's not tied to a mind. There is no mind there. There's no intentions or beliefs or desires. And we've never experienced that before as humans. Even when we're dealing with animals, for example, their communication systems, like your dog wagging its tail, we know what that means. It's because the dog has intentions. But now we've got an AI that's telling us things, and we feel like the AI must have intentions and beliefs because it's using language. And that's because of the power of language to trigger anthropomorphism. So the lessons to be learned are that anthropomorphism happens automatically, and you have to be aware of how it works and when you're doing it. That has improved our relationship with animals and our understanding of their cognition, and it will improve our relationship with AI. Because if we're talking about delusions and spiraling and things, that's because the anthropomorphism is running rampant and we aren't aware of how it functions. But if you understand the nitty-gritty details of how anthropomorphism is creating that feeling, you can take a step back and it's not as dangerous to you.
So what Justin is describing here, being able to constantly remember and reinforce the idea that the AI with which you're communicating is not human, is a form of AI fitness that has come up several times. And I hope we all get better at that. But despite tens of thousands of years of received cultural wisdom, we still struggle to make human-to-human relationships work. We are awful at social media, and most of us have smartphone addictions to one degree or another. So I'm not terribly optimistic this will be solved in the short term, which is why I think we need to, as a society and as individuals, spend more time talking about this, more time studying it, and more time figuring out what we want our AI relationships to look like, to be like, and what we want the role of AI and AI chatbots specifically to be in our lives. And now back to Phil.
The day that we told our kids that we were going to be separating, we sat them down on the couch. We told them what was going on. She and I sat next to each other. We held hands. It was a beautiful moment given the circumstances. But before we even stood up from the couch, she was on her phone looking at a car dealership's website. A few minutes later, she comes out dressed with shoes on and says, "Hey, I'm gonna go to a test drive." Long story short, later that night, she came home with a new car.
Over this time span of your wife's experience with ChatGPT, what was your own personal experience with ChatGPT like?
When I started realizing what was happening with her and what was the motivator behind some of these very drastic changes, I started interacting with it on more of a personal level. Because I wanted to understand how this could happen. Like, what is the draw? What is the interest here? I was so put off by the fact that she texted me that evening to say, "Hey, I just bought a new car," that I went to ChatGPT and I put in there like, "Oh my God, my wife just bought a new car." It basically told me that she had crossed a huge red line. After a handful of back and forths, it was telling me that I needed to, essentially that day, this is a Sunday afternoon, I needed to file an emergency order in court to have this purchase basically taken off of me as a spouse. And here's the language that I needed to submit to the court and get a temporary restraining order put against her. And at the moment, I was so enraged by the situation itself that I really fell into this trap. And I started going, yeah, this is really crazy. I can't believe she would do this. This is really bad. I need to speak to my lawyer. The next morning, when I calmed myself down and I was able actually to speak to my attorney live, my human real-life attorney's response was, "Yeah, this isn't that big of a problem. We can take care of it. It's one sentence in our filing." But if I didn't have this person, this real person who was an expert to tell me what the reality of the situation was, my view of this would have just continued to spiral because ChatGPT was telling me that this was an emergency. I had to take care of this right now. Here's the language that you need to file with the court. Here's how to file it. None of that was true. It escalated the situation way beyond what it needed to do.
This is one of the critical problems with chatbot relationships. Often, if you give them a problem, they assist you in making it worse. Back to Kate at the London School of Economics.
One thing that we see human companions do that we don't see AI systems do is often challenge us. So there have been some experiments about the relative willingness of, for example, human friends or romantic partners to call you out on something, to say, "Hey, look, this kind of behavior that you've been doing, or you were wrong about this, or that was insensitive." And oftentimes, right, that's how we learn and grow. So Aristotle, for example, had this both attractive and very high-flying view of friendship that like the best kind of friends make us better. The best kind of friends are ones that teach us and we learn from. And I think there's some truth in that. But, you know, if you think, well, what might be bad about an AI companion or an AI friend? If they don't challenge us in these kind of ways, then they're missing an important function of humans.
And now back to Phil, whose further involvement in his wife's car purchase reveals a truly devastating reality of chatbot friendship.
About a week later, after she purchased the vehicle, one of the other chats she had was doing research on car insurance. She was asking it, tell me about the best car insurance. And it gave what you would expect, it gave a breakdown of the various insurers that are out there, various options. And it ended this, I would say a good summary with a line that said, but the best way for you to understand what's best for you is to ask your family and friends about their experiences. And the response she sent back to this completely broke my heart. Her response was, I don't have any friends or family that I can ask. Like there's some amount of isolation happening with people who are falling into this and susceptible to this because they're pushing away other people in their lives. They're becoming very insular and they're just becoming so dependent across logic, emotion, mental health, social connection, right? They're offloading all of this thought to this tool. And that really drives the dependence angle in a way that I can't really even fully explain.
I spoke to Nick Haber, AI researcher and assistant professor at Stanford University.
I think that we have built towards paradigms in which we isolate, right? And there have been technologies that people put out, social media, where the attempt is to connect, right? I think that there's like real potential out there to build technology in ways that connect people in ways that we couldn't have ever done possible. But it also seems really hard, right? Like if you look at what phones do, at what social media does, what our current paradigms for how we interact with AI are, it seems really hard. Not to say that it's impossible. And I think that is something that really excites me, is that the potential to think about new paradigms for interacting with AI in ways that help us connect better. But clearly the technologies that we've built over the last 10 years aren't quite it.
Throughout my explorations of AI psychosis and chatbot delusions, I did discover one positive example of this technology bringing people together as a supportive community. And I want to share this story because when reckoning with these inhuman challenges, it's comforting to witness deeply human solutions. Etienne Brisson is the founder of the Human Line Project, a resource specifically created to support people with AI-related social and mental health challenges. The Human Line Project also invited me to their private Discord group, and it's been incredible to meet so many people who are there simply to connect with other humans and to help one another through this bizarre, non-human, and completely novel new social dynamic.
We're an activism group, and we're focused on getting accountability, regulation, legislation through doing research on the subject and also spreading awareness. So our goal would be to give people who are suffering from it the place where they could go without judgment and have resources that are tailored for what they're going through. This technology is just getting out there and we're talking about it everywhere, about how AI is such a great tool for workplace, such a great tool to organize their work life, even talking about how AI is a great tool for therapy. And I see the users just beginning to skyrocket. Now I think there's over 1 billion users, and it's kind of scary for me because that can be really, really, really dangerous. And every resource I could find, the response I was getting was regulation and legislation will take 5 to 10 years to get there. So right now, there's not really anything we can do about it. So kind of was helpless in a sense.
5 to 10 years. I mean, that seems like an eternity when you're looking at how fast this technology is evolving and how many people this is affecting.
5 to 10 years with that kind of population using it feels like an eternity for me as well. Yeah. So for me, it was create the response for that. I think this tool is not going anywhere. It shouldn't be going anywhere. But right now it's for profit. We're developing that tool with money in mind, with engagement in mind, with optimization in mind. And that's where I come in, and that's where I think we need to draw a line, the human line. So I think we're kind of trying to be a reference in safety around AI and make sure that it's built with an ethical goal in mind, because the progress is still continue to grow exponentially, and we need to make regulation and ethical before we go to that point, because it is probably going to be too late if we go to that point without any regulation before.
For all of the warranted pessimism about the unregulated AI experiment society is being forcibly subjected to by AI CEOs and our economic system's drive towards progress at seemingly any cost, there is hope. I've seen people suffer through these delusions and come out the other side intact. Something we didn't actually mention in episode 2 with Anthony, he went through a pretty serious psychotic break. It resurfaced a few times. He's struggled with this throughout the course of his adult life. He has a beautiful life. He has a wonderful career. He's happily married. He has a daughter who he's absolutely in love with. Like, things are okay. And I think that's a message that we need to get out there, is for people who haven't previously dealt with mental health conditions before, haven't dealt with delusions, haven't dealt with psychosis, it doesn't mean the rest of your life is ruined. You can get help. There's lots of help out there. And you can have a really meaningful, really productive life on the other side of dealing with something like this. But back to this episode. There's a chance here that Phil and his wife had an untenable relationship whose inevitable demise was merely accelerated by ChatGPT. But that's not how he feels. He feels that his wife's relationship with ChatGPT was the cause. And in all situations, but especially in a divorce, there's two sides. Often it's murky, and the truth often lies somewhere in the middle. Well, we'll never know. And the thing is, especially when it comes to ChatGPT being the cause of mental health issues or simply being a feature of mental health issues, no one quite knows yet. And that's because no one really knows the impact that this technology has on individuals and on their relationships. We're all participating in an experiment conducted by a handful of future trillionaires who also don't know. And what's more disturbing is they don't really seem to care, but I don't know. Maybe caring deeply about each other is a feature of the human operating system that's only reserved for the rest of us. Who am I to say?
I have a good friend who, someone I've known my entire life, is one of my best friends. She still goes to my wife for her haircuts. Because, again, she's really good at being a stylist. And I said, hey, well, how is she? Like, what did you think when you interacted with her? And my friend's response was essentially, she seems totally fine. Like, she doesn't have any sort of outward, signs of being in crisis. I only know about it because of how acutely it's impacted my day-to-day life and my family. But, my wife is still a good mom. She's still a good person. Yet she's clearly struggling with stuff. But she's still a very good mom. The kids are happy. They're doing great in school. But I genuinely hope that at some point, something will snap her out of this and she'll be able to come back and be the healthy, whole person that I think she wants to be.
Each story I've heard about the psychological infringement of technology into our lives further clarifies how essential human relationships actually are. And we're going to need to find a way to manage AI's interventions into these foundational human connections. Here's Dr. Joel Gold, Assistant Clinical Professor of Psychiatry at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai and the co-author of Suspicious Minds.
I guess maybe AI can amplify issues that exist. And we talk in the book about how the internet and social media has created the largest virtual city that could be imagined, and hence huge social stressor and a driver of delusion. AI seems like a different galaxy, and the impact it's going to have on relationships of all kinds, on the social fabric, it's so enormous. Life is founded on relationships. People say I'm an introvert. Some people like to be left alone. That may be true, but at the end of the day, relationships are foundational for most people. And when we don't have them, it's very, very hard to feel fulfilled.
If Phil's wife does in fact need help, I really hope she finds it. And I hope that everyone finds the appropriate help they need through friends, family, community support groups like the one Etienne has developed, or through professionals. My growing concern, however, is that there's not enough help out there for this specific condition. When we already face a deep crisis in the availability of therapy, and I'm extremely not confident that AI therapists, if people go that route, won't generate more problems than they'll solve, as Nick Haber's group at Stanford discovered in their study. And as we'll discuss in the final episode of season 1, I have a lot of reasons to believe that this problem will get worse and that it's going to get worse fast. And before we wrap this up, just today actually, before I started recording this, I saw that hundreds of leaders from technology, business, and I believe politics signed some sort of letter making a statement that they're calling for a prohibition on the development of artificial superintelligence, ASI. And the reason for this is they're concerned about what this is going to do to society, what this is going to do to the economy, and what this potentially could mean if things go wrong for humanity. And so there are some encouraging signs, but we've seen these things before. And it seems like the people who are actually in power, not just those who are talking about the technology, the people who are making the technology, are kind of going a different route. Just a couple days ago, from where we are right now, Sam Altman introduced ChatGPT would start allowing for explicit erotic content. If we thought that our episode about companionship was interesting, just wait until next season. If you don't want to miss an episode of Suspicious Minds, make sure to follow and subscribe. And if you like what you're seeing, give us a like on YouTube and give us a rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.